I'm Rachel Mitchell, 28 years old, and I still remember the exact moment my world imploded. Sitting cross-legged on my apartment floor surrounded by wedding invitations, my phone pinged. It was a text from my mother. "We're not funding this circus anymore. Wedding's off." My hands trembled as I frantically called the lakeside venue we'd booked. "I'm sorry, Miss Mitchell," the coordinator said uncomfortably. "But your mother canceled everything yesterday. All deposits have been forfeited." That's when I learned the cruelest lesson. Sometimes the deepest betrayals come from those who are supposed to love you most. Before I dive into this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever dealt with controlling parents, and subscribe to join our supportive community. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I turned this devastating moment into the best decision of my life. To understand why my mother's text destroyed me so completely, you need to understand Diane Mitchell. At 56, my mother was the undisputed ruler of our household, a woman whose perfectionism and need for control dictated every aspect of our lives. My father, James, 58, was successful in business but completely passive at home. He'd learned decades ago that peace meant letting Diane make all decisions. "Your mother knows what's best," he'd say with a resigned shrug whenever I appealed to him for support. It was his mantra, repeated so often it had lost all meaning. Then there was my younger sister, Jessica. At 25, she was the golden child who never challenged our mother's authority. Jessica studied business like mother wanted, dated boys mother approved of, and called home daily for guidance. In return, she enjoyed lavish gifts, constant praise, and our mother's unwavering support. I'd tried that path too. Despite my passion for art, I dutifully attended the prestigious business school mother selected. I spent 4 miserable years earning a degree I never wanted, trying desperately to win the approval that always seemed just out of reach. "A business degree will give you stability, Rachel," Mother had insisted. "Art is a hobby, not a career." Then I met Kyle Bennett in my final year of graduate school. At 30, he was brilliant, kind, and hardworking, an architect with his own small but growing practice. Kyle saw the real me beneath years of people-pleasing and encouraged me to rediscover my passion for painting. With his support, I began taking art classes again while working in marketing. Mother disliked him immediately. "He's not from our social circle, Rachel," she said after our first dinner together. "He doesn't understand our family values." What she meant was, Kyle came from a middle-class background. His parents were teachers. And worst of all, he encouraged my independence. The tension escalated over the 3 years we dated. Mother would accidentally schedule family events when Kyle and I had plans. She'd question his career ambitions and make cutting remarks about his clothes or mannerisms, always with a smile that dared him to object. When Kyle proposed, I naively thought a beautiful wedding might finally bridge the gap. Mother initially feigned excitement, but quickly attempted to hijack every decision. The guest list expanded from our desired 75 people to over 200, mostly her business associates and social connections. She dismissed my preferred venues without even visiting them. "The Carmichael Hotel is where we've held family weddings for generations," she insisted, though only my cousin had actually married there. Anything else would be inappropriate. The final straw came when Kyle and I found a stunning lakeside venue with a modern glass pavilion. It perfectly blended Kyle's architectural sensibilities with my artistic vision. And when we visited, we both knew immediately it was meant for us. "We've put down the deposit," I told Mother over dinner, trying to sound confident. "The lakeside pavilion is perfect for us." I'll never forget her expression like I'd slapped her. "You did what?" she hissed. "We made a decision about our wedding," Kyle said, reaching for my hand under the table. "I see," Mother said coldly. "Well, if you're making decisions without consulting us, perhaps you should fund this wedding yourselves." Father studied his plate while Jessica shot me a look that clearly said I was asking for trouble. But after years of surrender, I finally stood my ground. "We want your support, Mom. But ultimately, this is our wedding." The dinner ended shortly after, and for 3 weeks, an uneasy peace prevailed. Mother stopped calling about wedding plans, which I foolishly interpreted as acceptance. Instead, she was plotting her revenge. When Kyle arrived at my apartment an hour after I received Mother's text, his face was ashen. He'd been calling venues all morning after getting a strange email congratulating us on our decision to postpone. She didn't just cancel the pavilion, he said, dropping onto my couch. She canceled everything: the caterer, the photographer, the florist. They all confirmed she called personally. I couldn't speak as the reality crashed down on me. Months of planning, thousands of dollars in non-refundable deposits, all gone. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial my father's number. "Dad," I choked out when he answered. "Did you know about this?" His heavy sigh told me everything before he spoke. "Rachel, honey, I told your mother to discuss this with you first, but, well, you know how she gets when she believes she's protecting the family." Protecting the family? From what? My happiness. Another sigh. "Your mother knows best, Rachel. Maybe take some time to think about things. Kyle is, well, you could do better." I hung up, stunned by his betrayal. Kyle held me while I sobbed, his own anger palpable but controlled. "We'll figure this out," he kept saying, though neither of us knew how. The phone rang again, my sister Jessica. "What did you do to upset Mom so badly?" she demanded, without preamble. "She's been crying all morning about how ungrateful you are." "She canceled my wedding without telling me," I said numbly. "She stole our deposits and destroyed our plans." "Oh, please," Jessica scoffed. "She's trying to protect you from making a huge mistake. You know Kyle isn't right for this family. Just apologize and maybe she'll reconsider." I hung up on her too. The hits kept coming. My cousin Amanda, who I'd asked to be my maid of honor, and who had seemed genuinely excited about my relationship with Kyle, called next. "Rachel, I'm so sorry, but I think I need to step back from your wedding drama," she said awkwardly. "Your mom explained that things are complicated right now and that Kyle, well." "What did she tell you, Amanda?" The pause was excruciating. "She said there were fidelity issues, that you caught him cheating but were too embarrassed to call things off yourself." The lie was so shocking I couldn't even respond. After hanging up, I checked social media to find several mutual friends had already unfriended me. Mother's poison was spreading quickly. Kyle's parents called next, their concern evident even through the phone. "We don't have much saved," his mother said apologetically, "but we can contribute about $3,000 if it helps you restart the planning." Their kindness broke me all over again. Kyle's family had modest means but unlimited love and support, everything my wealthy family lacked. As the day wore on, the practical realities became clear. We'd lost over $15,000 in deposits. Our savings were nearly depleted. The affordable vendors we'd secured were now booked for the next year. And worst of all, my mother was systematically turning our social circle against us. Just when I thought the day couldn't get worse, my phone rang again. It was my boss, Patricia. "Rachel, I received a concerning call from your mother today," she began cautiously. "She suggested you might need some time off for mental health reasons." She mentioned erratic behavior and poor decision-making. My blood ran cold. "Patricia, my mother is trying to control my life. I'm perfectly fine." "Of course," she said, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. "Still, maybe a few days off would be good? Paid leave, of course." I recognized the lie. This was a professional way of saying, "We're watching you carefully now." My own mother had poisoned my workplace against me. That night, alone in the bathroom while Kyle made calls in the living room, I finally broke. Sitting on the cold tile floor, I sobbed until I couldn't breathe, wondering how the woman who gave birth to me could so callously destroy my happiness. The mental health leave my boss Patricia suggested quickly became mandatory. 2 weeks of paid leave to sort out my personal situation was how she phrased it. But her meaning was clear. Don't come back until you've handled your family drama. Our financial situation deteriorated rapidly. Without my income and with our savings depleted from lost wedding deposits, Kyle and I could no longer afford our apartment. We found a smaller place in a less desirable neighborhood, spending a miserable weekend downsizing our belongings and dreams simultaneously. "It's temporary," Kyle kept saying as we carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was perpetually broken. "We'll bounce back." I wanted to believe him, but Mother's campaign against us was gaining momentum. My best friend since college, Stephanie, began dodging my calls. When I finally cornered her at our favorite coffee shop, she couldn't meet my eyes. "I just don't want to get in the middle of a family thing," she mumbled, stirring her latte obsessively. "We've been friends for 8 years, Steph. You know me. You know Kyle. Do you honestly believe he'd cheat on me?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Your mom said there were pictures." "There are no pictures because it never happened," I hissed, too loudly. People at neighboring tables glanced over. Stephanie winced. "Look, your mom got me an interview at Marks and Industries. It's my dream job, Rachel. I can't risk upsetting her." I left the coffee shop feeling hollowed out. My own mother had bought my best friend's loyalty with a job opportunity. The betrayal cut deep. Another relationship sacrificed on the altar of my mother's control. Things escalated when police officers appeared at our door one evening, explaining they were conducting a wellness check after receiving calls about my mental state. "My mother called you," I said flatly as they assessed our apartment and my appearance. The older officer gave me a sympathetic look. "We're required to follow up on all concerns, but everything seems fine here." That wasn't the last wellness check. They became a regular occurrence, each one more humiliating than the last. The final indignity came at what was supposed to be a neutral family dinner at my grandparents' home. I agreed to attend only because my grandfather had personally called, promising a peaceful evening. I should have known better. Kyle and I had barely taken our seats when Mother rose, champagne glass in hand. "I'd like to make an announcement," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. While we've had some disappointments recently here, she looked pointedly at me. "I'm thrilled to share some happy news. Jessica and William Porter are engaged." The table erupted in congratulations while I sat frozen. William Porter was the son of Father's business partner, a man Jessica had mentioned exactly once in passing. Somehow, in just 3 weeks, they were not only dating, but engaged. "We're thinking the Carmichael Hotel in June," Jessica gushed, flashing a massive diamond ring. "Mom's already reserved the date. June, the month Kyle and I were supposed to marry." "Isn't this wonderful?" Mother said directly to me. "A proper match for our family." I excused myself to the bathroom, where Jessica followed me minutes later. "Mom says I can use the wedding planner she originally hired for you," she said, checking her reflection in the mirror, "since you won't be needing her services anymore." "Are you seriously marrying William Porter?" I asked. "You barely know him." Jessica shrugged. "He's from a good family, has excellent prospects, and Mom approves. That's more than enough." She turned to face me. "You could have had all this support if you just listened to Mom. Instead, you chose him." After dinner, Father pulled me aside in the hallway, his expression troubled. "Rachel, I want you to know, this isn't what I wanted," he said quietly. "Your mother, she means well, but her methods are cruel, manipulative, destructive." I supplied. He winced. "I know it seems that way now, but she genuinely believes she's protecting you by destroying my relationship, my career, my friendships. You don't understand the pressure she feels to maintain our family's position," he said weakly. "Her own parents were very demanding." "That explains her behavior, Dad. It doesn't excuse it." As we were leaving, I overheard Mother speaking to Aunt Patricia in the kitchen. "Of course, it was difficult," she was saying, "but I saved Rachel from ruining her life with that man. Sometimes children need us to make the hard choices they can't make themselves." The smug satisfaction in her voice made me physically ill. The final blow came the following week when Kyle received a letter from the Architectural Licensing Board, informing him that a complaint had been filed questioning his professional ethics. The letter didn't name the complainant, but we both knew. Mother was now targeting Kyle's career. That night, Kyle broke down for the first time. "Maybe she's right," he said, his voice hollow as he stared at the letter. "Maybe I'm not good enough for you. Look at what I've brought into your life." For one terrible moment, I considered what surrendering to Mother would mean. I could apologize, break up with Kyle, return to the family fold. The financial security, the social standing, the peace of not fighting anymore, it was tempting in my exhausted state. Instead, I took Kyle's face in my hands. "She is destroying us because she can't control us," I said fiercely. "If we give in now, we'll never be free." But as we held each other in our cramped apartment, with our careers in jeopardy and our support system in tatters, I honestly didn't know if we had the strength to withstand my mother's systematic destruction of our lives. The day everything changed began ordinarily enough. I was sorting through boxes we still hadn't unpacked when I found an old photo album. It contained family pictures from before Jessica was born, when I was still an only child. One photo caught my attention. My mother standing beside a woman who looked remarkably like her, both in their 20s. The woman had her arm around Mother, but Mother's smile seemed forced. I'd never seen this woman before. Several more photos showed this mystery woman at family gatherings, but she abruptly disappeared from later pages. On the back of one photo was written Diane and Catherine, 1988. When Kyle came home that evening, he brought pizza and determination. "I've been thinking all day," he said as we sat on our secondhand couch. "We need to stop reacting and start acting. Your mother is counting on us giving up." "I found something weird today," I said, showing him the photos. "I think my mother has a sister no one ever mentions." Kyle studied the pictures. "Catherine. Wasn't that your grandmother's name?" "My maternal grandmother was Elizabeth, but maybe this Catherine was named after someone else in the family." That night, I called my father's sister, Aunt Judith, the family gossip whom Mother barely tolerated at holidays. "Catherine?" Aunt Judith repeated when I asked. "Oh my, I haven't heard that name in years." "Yes, your mother has a sister younger by 2 years. They had some falling out before you were born. The family doesn't speak of her anymore." "What happened between them?" Aunt Judith hesitated. "It's not really my story to tell, dear. But if you're curious, Catherine lives in Maplewood now. Mitchell is her maiden name. I believe she never married." A quick internet search revealed only 3 Catherine Mitchells in Maplewood. The second one I called fell silent when I introduced myself. "Rachel," she finally said. "Diane's daughter?" We arranged to meet the following day at a cafe halfway between our homes. When I arrived, there was no mistaking Catherine Mitchell. She had Mother's eyes and cheekbones, though laughter lines softened her face in a way Mother's perpetual disapproval never allowed. "You look so much like her," Catherine said, embracing me like she'd known me my whole life. In a way, she should have. Over coffee, Catherine revealed the family history Mother had systematically erased. Catherine had been engaged to a music teacher named Daniel, whom their parents, particularly their controlling mother, deemed unsuitable. "Your grandmother was exactly like your mother is now," Catherine explained. "Everything was about social standing and appearances. When I refused to break up with Daniel, Diane was assigned to bring me back into line. Instead, Catherine eloped with Daniel, resulting in her complete excommunication from the family. Their parents cut her off financially and emotionally. Most painfully, Diane, once her closest confidant, led the charge in erasing Catherine from family narratives. "Daniel and I divorced after 10 years, Catherine said. "Without children," ironically. "But by then, the damage was done. Diane wouldn't even take my calls. She's doing the same thing to me," I whispered. History repeating itself. Catherine nodded sadly. "When I heard Diane had daughters, I sent birthday cards for years. They always came back marked, return to sender. Eventually, I stopped trying. I never knew you existed," I admitted. "Until yesterday." Catherine reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "But you found me now. And I want you to know something, Rachel. I've never regretted choosing love over family approval. Never. That meeting changed everything." Catherine became my first real ally, offering both emotional support and insight into Mother's psychological tactics. She recognized the same patterns that had destroyed her relationship with Mother now being used against me. That same week, Kyle came home with unexpected news. His coworker Marco needed wedding website designs for his brother's event planning business. "It's just a few sites to start," Kyle explained, "but Marco says there's steady demand. We could do it together, your design eye, my technical skills." Meanwhile, I reached out to my former art professor, Dr. Lydia Santos, who had always believed in my talent. When we met for coffee, she listened to my story without judgment. "Rachel, controlling people like your mother maintain power by isolation," she said. "They cut you off from support systems, make you dependent. Breaking free requires building new connections they can't touch." She offered me a position teaching weekend art classes at the community center. Not much money, but a chance to reconnect with my passion. That night, Kyle and I made a solemn pact. We wrote it down on paper and both signed it. 1. We will not surrender our relationship to manipulation. 2. We will build a new support system beyond Mother's reach. 3. We will marry on our terms, when we're ready. 4. We will never use control or emotional blackmail in our own relationship. As a first small act of defiance, I blocked Mother's number and removed her from all my social media. It felt simultaneously terrifying and liberating, like jumping off a cliff but finally experiencing freefall. She'll escalate when she realizes she's lost direct access to you, Kyle warned. I know, I said, but I'm ready. When Catherine invited us to her home the following weekend, I was surprised to find a beautiful craftsman-style house filled with art and music, everything my mother's sterile, magazine-perfect home lacked. Did my mother ever tell you why she married my father? I asked, as Catherine served tea in mismatched cups I instantly adored. Catherine set down the teapot. Diane wasn't always like this, Rachel. When we were young, she was actually the rebellious one. She wanted to study fashion design in Paris. This revelation stunned me. My status-obsessed mother had once had dreams of her own. What happened? Our parents arranged her introduction to James. He came from money, had the right connections. When Diane hesitated, our mother did exactly what Diane is doing to you. She systematically eliminated all other options until James seemed like the only choice. So she's repeating the pattern, Kyle said quietly. Precisely. Diane never went to Paris. She became exactly what our mother molded her to be. And now she's trying to forge you in the same image, Rachel. Armed with this new understanding, Kyle and I accelerated our plans for independence. Our side business designing websites for wedding vendors grew steadily. The irony wasn't lost on us building our future through other people's weddings while our own remained in limbo. Kyle's boss, Thomas, became our second unexpected ally when he called Kyle into his office one morning. I received a strange call yesterday, Thomas said bluntly. A woman claiming to be your future mother-in-law expressed concerns about your commitment to the firm. Suggested I reconsider your position on the Westfield project. Kyle's stomach dropped. I'm sorry, sir. Rachel's mother is. Thomas waved his hand dismissively. Kyle, my own mother-in-law tried to bribe me to break up with my wife 30 years ago. I recognize this for what it was immediately. You're still on the Westfield project. In fact, I'm increasing your role. This small victory bolstered our confidence. I started therapy with Dr. Martinez, a specialist in family trauma, who helped me understand the dynamics I'd been trapped in. Your mother exhibits classic narcissistic control patterns, she explained during one session. She's not concerned about your happiness, only her control over you. That's why she escalates when you assert independence. Through therapy, I began excavating years of manipulated memories and gaslighting. I reconnected with cousins on father's side, who had also experienced mother's interference in their lives. Several had stories of relationships mysteriously ending after mother had helpful conversations with their partners. Our financial situation gradually improved. I sold several paintings through an online gallery, rediscovering the joy of creation that mother had nearly extinguished. Kyle's expanded role at work came with a modest raise. We were nowhere near our previous comfort level, but we were standing on our own feet. Then the notes began appearing. The first was slipped under our apartment door. He'll leave you once you're completely isolated. Call your mother. The second was tucked under my windshield wiper. Family is forever. Pride is temporary. Call your mother. I wasn't surprised when Jessica showed up unannounced at our apartment one evening. Her expression a practiced mixture of concern and condescension. Mom's worried sick about you, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. You've blocked everyone's numbers. You're not on social media anymore. People are talking, Rachel. Let them talk, I said, surprised by my own calmness. Jessica's eyes darted around our apartment, taking in the secondhand furniture and smaller space. This is what you chose over family? Over security? She shook her head. It's not too late, you know. Mom would welcome you back if you just admitted you made a mistake. The only mistake I made was not standing up to her sooner, I replied. Are you happy, Jessica? Really happy? Or are you just well-trained? Something flickered in my sister's eyes, doubt, perhaps before her mask of superiority returned. I'm engaged to a wonderful man from a respected family. Of course, I'm happy. After she left, Kyle looked troubled. She was taking pictures of our apartment with her phone when you were getting her water. I saw her reflection in the TV screen. Gathering intelligence for mother. I sighed. Classic. The next betrayal blindsided me completely. While reviewing our bank statements, I noticed several attempts to access my accounts from an unrecognized device. When I called the bank, they confirmed someone had attempted to gain access, claiming a family medical emergency. We denied the request as they didn't have your security information, the bank representative explained, but they were quite persistent. The woman identified herself as Diane Mitchell, your mother. Most devastating was the discovery that father had known about mother's wedding cancellation plans all along. I learned this when a cousin forwarded me an email mother had accidentally sent to the wrong address weeks before the cancellation. It clearly showed father being consulted about the intervention plan for my inappropriate relationship. The pressure nearly broke us. One night, after learning that Kyle's parents had received anonymous calls, warning them to control their son before he ruins his life, we had our first serious fight. Maybe we should just leave, Kyle said, pacing our small living room. Move to another state. Start over completely. That's exactly what she wants, I shouted. To drive us away. To make us run. To prove we can't stand on our own. And what if she's right? Kyle snapped, his patience finally breaking. Look at us, Rachel. We're barely making ends meet. Every day brings some new attack. Your family has unlimited resources to make our lives hell. When does it end? The terrible silence that followed was filled with all our unspoken fears. Were we fighting a losing battle? Was love enough against such relentless opposition? That night, we slept apart Kyle on the couch, me in our bedroom. But in the morning, he brought me coffee and sat beside me on the bed. I'm sorry, he said simply. I don't want to give up. I don't want to run away. I want to build a life with you, right here, on our terms. I leaned against him, drawing strength from his presence. Then let's stop being victims. Let's fight back. Mother's campaign against us entered a new, more vicious phase when Kyle received formal notice from the Architectural Licensing Board that a complaint had been filed alleging ethical violations. The complaint claimed Kyle had misrepresented his credentials on the Westfield project. This is serious, Kyle said, his face pale as he read the letter. If the board finds against me, I could lose my license. I felt physically ill knowing my mother was willing to destroy Kyle's career, years of education, and hard work simply to prove her point. Simultaneously, Mother launched what could only be described as a smear campaign throughout our social and professional circles. Former friends called with concerns about my mental health, reporting that Mother had tearfully confided fears I was experiencing a breakdown. She showed us disturbing texts you sent her, said a college friend who had once been in my inner circle. When I explained I hadn't communicated with Mother in weeks, she seemed confused, but I saw them on her phone. Mother had apparently created fake text exchanges to show to concerned friends. The situation escalated when I discovered my car in the parking lot with "Call Mom" scratched deeply into the hood paint. The apartment building's security cameras malfunctioned during the precise window when the vandalism occurred. We filed a police report, but without evidence, there was little they could do. The officer looked sympathetic but helpless. Family disputes are the worst, he said, shaking his head. But unless you have proof your mother did this. Jessica's reappearance came as no surprise. This time, she arrived with a conciliatory smile and a gift basket. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, seeming genuinely contrite, about being happy versus well-trained. I realized I miss my sister. Desperate for family connection that wasn't toxic, I cautiously welcomed her olive branch. We had lunch together twice, carefully avoiding discussion of Mother or Kyle. Jessica seemed genuinely interested in my art and new teaching position. Then, Kyle received an email from a client canceling a significant contract, a client Jessica had specifically asked about during our last lunch. When Kyle called to inquire why, the client awkwardly mentioned concerning information about your personal situation they'd received. The final confirmation of Jessica's betrayal came when I noticed her designer purse unzipped during a bathroom break at our third lunch. Inside was a small notebook with meticulous notes about our finances, work schedules, and client names. When confronted, Jessica didn't even deny it. Mom needs to know you're okay, she said defensively. You've shut her out completely. You mean she needs intelligence to more effectively target us? I corrected. You're not here because you miss me. You're here as her spy. Jessica's expression hardened. You've always been so dramatic, Rachel. Mom protects this family. Everything she does is out of love. That's not love, Jessica. It's control. Our mother's most brazen move came when she simply showed up at my workplace unannounced. I had recently secured a part-time position at a local marketing firm far below my previous professional level, but a start at rebuilding my career. Mother walked into the office dressed impeccably, introducing herself to everyone as she made her way to my desk. Rachel, darling, she said loudly enough for the entire office to hear. I've been so worried. Your father and I haven't heard from you in weeks. I maintained my composure with effort. This isn't appropriate, Mom. I'm working. Of course, she nodded, her smile never reaching her eyes. I just wanted to make sure you're taking your medication regularly. The doctor was very clear about the importance of consistency with your condition. The implication hung in the air as coworkers pretended not to listen. There was no medication, there was no condition, but the damage was done. I escorted Mother outside, trembling with rage. What do you want from me? I demanded once we were alone. To destroy every aspect of my life until I surrender? For a moment, her mask slipped, revealing the cold determination beneath. I want you to come to your senses. That boy is beneath you. He's turned you against your family. You did that yourself, I said quietly. And Kyle is twice the person you'll ever be. Her eyes narrowed. You've always been stubborn, Rachel. Just like Catherine. Look how well that turned out for her. The mention of my aunt, who Mother had pretended didn't exist, confirmed she knew I'd found Catherine. It was meant to frighten me, but instead, it strengthened my resolve. Catherine is happy, I replied. That's what terrifies you. Mother's lips pressed into a thin line. You'll come back eventually. When he leaves you, and he will leave you once you have nothing left to offer, you'll understand I was right. The most devastating revelation came that evening, when I received a call from Father. He sounded unusually agitated. Rachel, this has gone far enough, he said without preamble. Your mother is beside herself. You need to come home and sort this out. Did you know she filed a false complaint against Kyle with the licensing board? I asked. Did you know she's telling people I have a mental condition requiring medication? His silence was damning. You knew, I whispered. You've known about everything from the beginning. Your mother has her methods. But her intentions, stop. I cut him off. Just stop. You're as responsible as she is. You've enabled her my entire life. Rachel. No, I always thought you were just passive, Dad. A victim of her control like the rest of us. But you're complicit. You've always been complicit. After hanging up, I sobbed in Kyle's arms. Mourning the father I thought I had a good man who was simply weak. The truth was much worse. He was an active participant in Mother's manipulations, using her as the bad cop, while maintaining plausible deniability for himself. That night, Kyle and I sat at our small kitchen table, surrounded by evidence of Mother's escalating campaign against us. The licensing board complaint, photos of my vandalized car, printed emails from clients canceling contracts. The notebook we'd photographed from Jessica's purse. We can't just defend anymore, Kyle said, his voice firm despite his exhaustion. We need to go on the offensive. How? She has all the power, all the connections. Kyle took my hand. She only has the power we give her. It's time to take it back. Despite the weight pressing on us, something had shifted. We were no longer frightened victims awaiting the next blow. We were survivors planning our counterattack. Our first strategic move was simple but effective: documentation. I purchased a small recording device and carried it everywhere. In most states, recording conversations where you're a participant is perfectly legal, something Mother hadn't considered. The opportunity came sooner than expected when Mother appeared at my community center art class. I activated the recorder as she cornered me in the supply closet. This has gone on long enough, Rachel, she hissed, dropping all pretense of maternal concern now that we were alone. Do you think I won't keep going? That there's a line I won't cross? Why are you doing this? I asked, making sure my voice was clear for the recording. Why can't you just let me be happy with the man I love? Love? She scoffed. You think this is about love? It's about our family name, our position. I've worked too hard building our social standing to let you throw it away on some nobody architect. So you'd rather destroy my life than let me make my own choices? I'm saving you from yourself, she snapped. Yes, I canceled your ridiculous wedding. Yes, I called Kyle's licensing board. Yes, I'll continue making both your lives difficult until you see reason. That's what mothers do. Every damning word was captured perfectly. Catherine introduced us to Martin Friedman, an attorney who specialized in cases involving emotional abuse and harassment. After reviewing our evidence, he was blunt but encouraging. Your mother's actions constitute harassment, defamation, and possibly fraud, he explained. The licensing board complaint alone could be grounds for legal action, as she knowingly filed false claims that could damage his professional standing. We didn't want money. We wanted peace. Martin helped us draft a cease and desist letter outlining Mother's actions with our evidence attached. The letter made clear that any further interference would result in legal action and public exposure. Meanwhile, Kyle and I pursued another line of inquiry. The wedding venue's sudden cancellation had always seemed suspicious. They'd been so enthusiastic about our plans. Kyle called the manager directly, bypassing the coordinator we'd worked with. I'll be honest with you, the manager said after some hesitation. Your mother offered to book 3 corporate events at triple our normal rate if we claimed the venue had a plumbing emergency on your date. She said it was a surprise for you that you were upgrading to the Carmichael Hotel but wanted to keep it quiet. And you believed that? Kyle asked incredulously. The manager had the grace to sound embarrassed. It seemed unusual, but the booking fees were substantial. When you never contacted us about the change, we realized something was wrong. But by then, similar conversations with our photographer, caterer, and florist revealed the same pattern. Mother had either bribed or threatened each vendor to break their contracts with us. Our photographer, Alicia, had refused the bribe, becoming our third ally in the process. I still have all your engagement photos, she told us. And I saved the emails from your mother trying to buy me off. I'm happy to provide affidavits about her interference if needed. The most difficult confrontation was with Jessica. I invited her to meet at a public cafe, knowing she'd expect another opportunity to gather intelligence. I know what you've been doing, I said once we were seated. The notebook. The reports back to Mom, using information about Kyle's clients to help her sabotage his business. Jessica started to deny it, but I placed a folder on the table. This contains photocopies of your notebook pages, statements from Kyle's clients confirming Mother contacted them with false information, and records of your text messages to Mother immediately after our meetings. Martin Friedman, our attorney, has the originals. Jessica's carefully cultivated poise cracked. You don't understand the pressure she puts on me, she whispered, tears welling. Every day, it's be more like William expects. Don't disappoint the family. Remember your responsibility to the Mitchell name. I understand better than anyone, I said gently. But Jess, can't you see? This is exactly how she controlled Catherine, how her mother controlled her. It's a toxic cycle. What choice do I have? Jessica asked, her voice breaking. This engagement to William, it wasn't my idea. I barely know him. You always have a choice, I said, reaching for her hand. It's scary as hell to make it, but you do. For the first time in years, Jessica and I really talked. Behind her perfect facade, my sister was miserable, engaged to a man she didn't love, studying for a career she hated, living her life according to Mother's blueprint. As her defenses crumbled, I glimpsed the scared little girl beneath, desperate for the approval I'd finally stopped chasing. Our reconnection became an unexpected turning point. Jessica didn't immediately break her engagement or confront Mother, but she stopped spying for her. Instead, she began her own therapy, taking tentative steps toward independence. Meanwhile, Kyle and I launched our business officially, Mitchell Bennett Design Studio. We combined my artistic eye and marketing experience with Kyle's architectural precision, creating websites and branding for small businesses. Working from our apartment, we gradually built a client base beyond Mother's influence. The most unexpected development came when Father requested to meet with me alone. Wary but curious, I agreed to see him at a restaurant of my choosing. He looked older than I remembered, the strain evident in the new lines around his eyes. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he said immediately, "and I'd appreciate if you kept it that way." "Why are you here, Dad?" He stared at his coffee for a long moment. "I received your cease and desist letter, the recordings, hearing Diane speak to you that way." He shook his head. "I've spent 30 years making excuses for her behavior, telling myself she means well despite her methods. I can't do it anymore." "You were copied on emails about destroying my relationship," I reminded him. "You knew she canceled my wedding and lied to everyone about it." "Yes," he admitted, finally meeting my eyes. "I've been a coward, Rachel. I convinced myself I was protecting the family by letting her handle things her way. But the truth is, I was protecting myself from her anger." His candor was unprecedented. What changed? Hearing her voice on that recording, seeing the evidence laid out so clearly, and he hesitated. "Catherine reached out to me." This surprised me. "You've spoken to Aunt Catherine?" He nodded. "For the first time in nearly 30 years, she made me see what's happening with clear eyes." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is a cashier's check for the amount you lost in wedding deposits. It's not from the family accounts, it's from my personal savings. Diane doesn't know about it." I didn't reach for the envelope. "Money doesn't fix this, Dad." "I know," he said quietly. "But it's a start. I'm seeing a therapist now, trying to understand how I let things get this bad. I should have protected you, Rachel. I'm so sorry I didn't." Though wary of another trap, the genuine remorse in Father's eyes gave me pause. I took the check but made no promises about reconciliation. Trust, once shattered, couldn't be rebuilt with a single conversation. As our evidence mounted and our position strengthened, Mother found herself increasingly isolated. Family members and social connections, previously cowed by her influence, began to distance themselves as whispers of her behavior spread. The final piece fell into place when Grandfather Mitchell, Mother's father, and the family patriarch requested a meeting with all of us. At 88, he rarely left his estate, but the family's growing discord had reached him. Mother couldn't refuse his summons without raising more questions. The stage was set for our final confrontation. Grandfather Mitchell's estate felt frozen in time, a sprawling colonial home filled with antiques and family portraits going back generations. As a child, I'd found it intimidating. Now, walking into the formal sitting room with Kyle beside me and Catherine meeting us at the door, I felt strangely calm. "You're doing the right thing," Catherine whispered as she embraced me. "Remember, you're not alone anymore." Mother and Father arrived next, followed by Jessica and William. Mother's eyes narrowed when she saw Catherine, but Grandfather's entrance prevented her from commenting. Despite his age, Harold Mitchell commanded respect, assisted by his nurse, but walking under his own power to his favorite chair. "I've called this meeting because our family is fracturing," Grandfather began without preamble. "The Mitchell name has always stood for integrity and unity. Recent events suggest we've strayed from those values." Mother straightened in her chair. "Father, I've done everything possible to uphold our family traditions." "I haven't finished, Diane," Grandfather interrupted sharply. "When your sister Catherine made her choice years ago, I allowed you and your mother to orchestrate her removal from this family. It was the greatest mistake of my life." Catherine inhaled sharply beside me. This was clearly not what she'd expected to hear. "Now, I see history repeating itself with Rachel," Grandfather continued. "I won't allow it again." Mother's composure cracked slightly. "This situation is completely different. Catherine ran off with a penniless musician. Rachel is being manipulated by someone who loves her." Grandfather cut in. "As Daniel loved Catherine." "With respect, sir," Kyle spoke for the first time. "Rachel and I aren't asking for financial support or approval. We're simply asking to live our lives without interference or sabotage." Mother turned to Father for support, but to everyone's surprise, he didn't offer the expected backup. "Diane," Father said quietly, "we need to stop this crusade." "James!" Mother gasped. "You know everything I've done has been to protect Rachel from making a terrible mistake." "The only mistake," I interjected, "was thinking I needed your approval to be happy." I placed a folder on the coffee table. "This contains recordings of you admitting to canceling our wedding without our knowledge, filing false complaints with Kyle's licensing board, spreading malicious lies about his fidelity, and threatening to continue destroying our lives until we surrendered to your control. Mother's face drained of color as Jessica unexpectedly moved to sit beside me. I'm breaking off my engagement to William, Jessica announced. I don't love him, and I'm tired of living the life you've scripted for me. William, to his credit, didn't seem surprised. I've been trying to tell you the same thing, Diane, he said. Jessica and I are better as friends. Mother stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You've all been poisoned against me when all I've ever done is protect this family. By controlling it, Catherine said. Just as our mother controlled you. Don't you dare compare me to her, Mother snapped, genuine anguish breaking through her rage. Then stop becoming her, Catherine replied gently. Break the cycle, Diane. Mother looked around the room, recognizing her isolation for the first time. Her carefully constructed dominance was crumbling. In a last, desperate attempt to regain control, she sank back into her chair with a sob. I'm not well, she whispered. I've been having terrible headaches, dizzy spells. The doctor is concerned it might be. She trailed off suggestively. I'd seen this tactic before the sudden illness that required everyone to rally around her, setting aside all other concerns to focus on her needs. That's concerning, I said carefully. What exactly did Dr. Matthews diagnose? Mother hesitated, caught off guard by the specific name. Dr. Matthews had been our family physician for decades. He's running tests, she evaded. That's strange, Father said, his voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. Because I spoke to Robert Matthews at the club yesterday. He mentioned you canceled your annual physical for the third time. The silence that followed was deafening. Mother's manipulation had finally failed completely. Grandfather leaned forward in his chair. Diane, I enabled your mother's controlling behavior, and in doing so, I helped create this situation. I failed Catherine, and I nearly failed Rachel. I won't continue that failure. He turned to me and Kyle. I've amended my will. A trust is being established for each of my grandchildren, including Catherine's children whom I've never met. These funds are accessible only to you, not to your parents. Additionally, I've instructed the Family Foundation to provide matching funding for your design business, should you wish it. Mother's face contorted with fury and disbelief. Father, you can't. I can, and I have, Grandfather interrupted firmly. And one more thing, Diane. If you continue this campaign against Rachel and Kyle, if you interfere in Jessica's life choices, or if you attempt to punish James for finding his voice, you will be removed as a trustee of the Family Foundation and your position at Mitchell Industries will be reconsidered. It was the one threat Mother couldn't ignore. Her identity was completely wrapped up in her social position and family standing. As the meeting concluded, Mother remained seated, shell-shocked by her loss of control. Father approached Kyle and me awkwardly. I hope someday you can forgive my weakness, he said. I'm finding my way back to the man I used to be. Jessica hugged me tightly. I've started therapy, she whispered. I'm learning how to make my own choices. Outside, as Kyle and I walked to our car, Catherine caught up with us. It won't be an immediate transformation, she warned. Diane won't change overnight, if ever. But her power over you is broken. That's what matters. Looking back at the imposing family home, I felt a burden lifting. For the first time in my life, I said, I'm not afraid of disappointing her. Kyle squeezed my hand. Ready to plan our own circus? I laughed, a genuine, free sound I hadn't heard from myself in months. Absolutely. 6 months after the confrontation at Grandfather's estate, Kyle and I stood on the deck of Catherine's lakeside cabin, finalizing details for our wedding. The weathered wood dock stretched into crystal blue water, surrounded by vibrant autumn foliage, a perfect natural backdrop for the intimate ceremony we'd planned. The chairs will be arranged here, I explained to Catherine, who had generously offered her vacation property as our venue. Just 30 seats, only people who truly support us. It's perfect, Catherine smiled, linking her arm through mine. Simple, meaningful, and completely yours. Our wedding planning this time around was everything the first attempt. Wasn't joyful, stress-free, and authentic. No society photographers, no 7-course meals, no mother-approved guest list. Just the people we loved in a beautiful setting. celebrating our commitment. The path to this moment hadn't been smooth. Mother had maintained a chilly silence for weeks after the family meeting, then launched a campaign to present herself as the wounded party. She sent expensive but passive-aggressive gifts to our apartment items we promptly returned. She made tearful phone calls to extended family members, lamenting her ungrateful daughters who had abandoned her. When these tactics failed to regain control, she shifted to a more subtle approach, sending messages through intermediaries, suggesting she was ready to reconcile if we would simply meet her halfway, which meant submitting to her authority while she maintained the fiction of compromise. These overtures stopped abruptly when grandfather followed through on his promise to establish independent trusts for his grandchildren. Mother's power had always stemmed from financial control. With that leverage gone, she had no choice but to reassess her position. Jessica's journey proved more complicated than my own. Breaking her engagement to William was merely the first step in reclaiming her autonomy. Years of compliance had left her unsure of her own preferences and desires. "I don't even know what I like to eat anymore," she confessed during one of our lunch dates. "I always ordered whatever Mom suggested was appropriate." Through therapy and gentle encouragement, Jessica gradually rediscovered herself. She transferred to an art history program, her true passion, and moved into her own apartment, decorating it according to her tastes rather than Mother's approved aesthetic. "She calls daily to critique my decisions," Jessica told me over coffee one morning. "But Dr. Levine taught me this great technique. I just say I'll consider that and change nothing." Father's transformation proved the most surprising. After decades of deferring to Mother, he began asserting himself in small but significant ways. He reopened his workshop in the garage, a space Mother had converted to storage years ago, and resumed the woodworking hobby he'd abandoned before I was born. "I'm making your wedding arch," he told me during one of our tentative lunch meetings. "If you'll accept it." The fact that he asked rather than assumed spoke volumes about his growing awareness of boundaries. Mother refused to attend counseling despite Father's requests, but his participation in family therapy sessions with Jessica and me helped rebuild some of the trust that had been shattered. He wasn't a perfect father, suddenly. There were too many years of enablement for that, but he was trying, and that meant something. Kyle and I focused on growing our design business, which expanded beyond wedding websites to include branding for small businesses and creative entrepreneurs. Grandfather's matching fund allowed us to rent a small studio space and hire our first employee, a talented graphic design student named Maya, who brought fresh energy to our projects. Our apartment was still modest compared to my previous lifestyle, but it had become a true home filled with artwork, plants, and furniture we'd chosen together. We'd repainted the walls, replacing the institutional beige with warm colors that reflected our personalities. The second-hand couch had been reupholstered in rich blue fabric, complementing the abstract paintings I'd created during my healing process. 2 weeks before our wedding, I received an unexpected delivery, a small package containing a vintage hairpin adorned with sapphires. "It belonged to your great-grandmother," the accompanying note read in Father's handwriting. "She wore it on her wedding day, as did your grandmother and Catherine. Your mother chose not to wear it, preferring newer pieces, but I thought you might appreciate its history." I cried when I showed it to Kyle, not from sadness, but from the profound realization that family legacy could be selective. We could choose which traditions to honor and which to leave behind. On our wedding day, 30 chairs filled with genuine well-wishers faced the lake. Catherine stood beside me as my matron of honor, while Kyle's brother served as best man. Father walked me down the grassy aisle to the beautiful wooden arch he'd crafted, his eyes misting as he placed my hand in Kyle's. "Be happier than we were," he whispered before taking his seat. Mother's absence was conspicuous, but not painful. She'd sent a last-minute text. "I still think you're making a mistake." I'd simply replied, "I'm sorry you feel that way," and turned off my phone. Jessica read a poem she'd selected herself. Not one mother would have approved about building love on honesty rather than expectation. Kyle's parents presented us with a handmade quilt for our home. Grandfather, unable to attend due to health concerns, sent a video message blessing our union and apologizing for years of silence when intervention was needed. We wrote our own vows, promising to support each other's dreams, to communicate honestly through difficulties, and to never use control or manipulation as weapons. When the officiant pronounced us married, the small gathering erupted in genuine cheers that meant more than any elaborate society wedding could have offered. The reception was equally personal, a casual dinner in Catherine's backyard, with Kyle's mother's famous lasagna alongside gourmet cupcakes from a bakery we'd helped brand. We danced under strings of lights to music we loved, surrounded by people who truly celebrated our happiness. A week later, we returned to our apartment, now officially home to the Bennett family, to find a small envelope in our mailbox. Inside was a check from Mother with a terse note, "Wedding gift. No strings attached." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "Do we trust it?" I studied the check for a moment before tearing it in half. "New rule. We only accept gifts given in love, not obligation." He smiled, pulling me close. "I'm proud of you." As we settled into married life, our business continued to thrive. I expanded my community center art classes to include sessions for children from low-income neighborhoods, finding purpose in helping young people express themselves without fear of judgment. Mother maintained her distance, though we heard through Jessica that she'd begun seeing a therapist of her own, not for family reconciliation, but because grandfather had made it a condition of her continued role at Mitchell Industries. Whether it would lead to genuine change remained to be seen, but it was a start. On our first anniversary, we gathered friends and family at our studio for a dual celebration, our marriage milestone, and the announcement that I was 12 weeks pregnant. "We're creating a new family legacy," Kyle told the assembled guests, his hand resting protectively on my still flat stomach. "One built on acceptance, support, and unconditional love." Catherine raised her glass, "To breaking cycles and building bridges." As I looked around at our chosen family, some related by blood, others by bonds we'd forged ourselves, I felt profound gratitude for the crisis that had ultimately freed us. Mother's attempt to control our lives had instead liberated us to create something authentic and truly ours. Later that night, as Kyle and I sat on our small balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. When Mom texted, "We're not funding this circus," I thought my world was ending, I said quietly. But she was right about one thing: life is a circus. It's wild and unpredictable and sometimes terrifying. Kyle took my hand, tracing the simple gold band on my finger. "But we get to choose our own acts, pick our own ringmasters, and decide who gets tickets to the show," I finished, leaning against his shoulder. The future stretched before us, unscripted and full of possibility, exactly as it should be. Have you ever had to stand up to controlling family members for the sake of your own happiness? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Remember that building boundaries is an act of self-care, not selfishness. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of finding freedom and creating life on your own terms. Thank you for being part of this supportive community. And remember, you always have the right to write your own story.